Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today we're going to be going over 10 old cars that are really good with low grip tires in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now if you didn't know this, the ability to put low grip tires on every single car in Grand Theft Auto Online has now been added to the game with the Criminal Enterprises DLC. So that means you can go ahead and take any old car that you could otherwise customize, and you can take it to the LS car meet and put low grip tires on for the cost of $500. Unfortunately, it does remove your bulletproof tires, but you can still do it. So anyway, here are 10 vehicles that are fun with low grip tires. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started with number 10. At number 10, we have the Benefactor Schwarzer. Now the Schwarzer goes for $80,000 on Southern San Andreas Super Autos, or of course you can steal this thing off of the street. Now this is the type of car that is pretty good with low grip tires for drifting. Now the thing with a lot of these cars is you're going to have to really maintain your throttle control. That means you're not just going to be able to hold the throttle down and the thing is just going to drift perfectly every single time. You're going to have to tap it, you're going to have to press it, you're going to have to let go of it, all that sort of stuff in order to maintain a drift. But when you learn how to do it properly, it actually makes driving these cars and drifting these cars really easy. I've barely been practicing with the Schwarzer and I'm still managing to drift semi-decent, and no, okay, not quite. The Schwarzer is pretty easy to drift and it is also pretty fun to drift, especially with the new customization that's done to it. Obviously, if you guys have seen some of my other videos going over this thing, you will know that they've added new customization to this car, which is pretty nice. So as you guys can see, I am drifting semi-decently now, and I am having to control the throttle quite a bit. I'm not just being able to hold it right through the corner all the way. That is something, like I said, that you're going to have to learn and get, used to and everything. Because, we're not really used to having low grip tires on a lot of these old cars, so it is something new. It's something everyone's going to have to learn about, but it is pretty fun nonetheless. Schwarzer is a great car. It's definitely a very good entry-level car if you guys don't want to spend a lot of money and get low grip tires on a car that's fun to drift. The Schwarzer, I mean, you can't go wrong with this thing in my opinion. Anyways, that's it for number 10. Let's move on to number 9. Next up, we have the Bravado Gauntlet Hellfire, and you can probably guess what this thing's category is going to be. It is, of course, very easy to drift. The Hellfire, if you didn't know, is already easy to drift, but it's just even easier now with low grips. It's actually a bit treacherous to drive, to be completely honest. It's kind of hard to get used to, but when you do get used to it, this thing absolutely shreds, and it's really easy to get it to drift because it's easy to get it to drift on normal tires, so on low grips, you can, probably figure it out. Now, the Hellfire goes for a little bit cheaper than everyone usually thinks. It goes for about $730,000, I do believe. So it's a pretty fair price for the car that you get for it. It's definitely one of the most fun cars in GTA Online, in my opinion. And it's also got great customization, looks great. It drives awesome no matter what you do, but with low grips on it, this thing is an absolute drift machine. Now, I've previously included the Hellfire on my top 10 best drift cars list in GTA Online, and it's definitely staying on that list now because, I mean, it's just insane, especially with low grip tires. It's super controllable, surprisingly. Maybe it's just because I'm used to driving this car regularly, but with low grip tires, I find this thing super manageable. It feels absolutely awesome to drift, and I would definitely recommend trying it out because it's an absolute blast. If you have a Hellfire, take off the bulletproof tires if you have them and throw on low grips and have some fun. This thing is absolutely awesome. Anyway guys, that's it for number 9. Let's move on to number 8. Next up at number 8, we have the Albany VSTR coming in at about $1.6 million. Now this car is a little more on the expensive side, and it drives a lot more similarly to the Hellfire than I think a lot of people realize. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not undrivable for the most part, so it's a bit better than the Hellfire, but it does have a very crazy drift tendency, even with regular tires. Obviously, this thing is, of course, a 4-door, so you can drift with, 4 players inside of it. This is another car that is going to be really fun to drift. This thing slides like crazy with, normal tires, very similar to the Hellfire. But with the low grips on it, this thing is absolutely hilarious to drive. You can get going super fast, like you can see me doing, and just fishtail this thing all the way down the road. It's an absolute blast. The VSTR is definitely one of the cars that I recommend the most in Grand Theft Auto Online to people who really like cars because it's based very heavily off of a Cadillac CTS-V, which I feel like is a pretty underrated car in real life, and I feel like this thing's pretty underrated in GTA. Don't get me wrong, if you know what this thing is, you know what it is. But if you've never seen it before, you probably think it's kind of an average sedan, but it is so much more than that. The VSTR truly is one of the coolest and one of the craziest sedans in Grand Theft Auto Online. So anyway, that's pretty much it for the Albany VSTR. Definitely recommend trying this thing out regardless of if you're going to put low grips on it or not. I think it's a great car and I think that everybody should own one of these, honestly. So definitely go and check it out. Let's move on to number 7. Next up, of course, we have the Banshee 900R. Now this thing is a pretty notorious drift car in Grand Theft Auto Online to begin with, but once you go ahead and add low grip tires to it, it becomes very slow, but it also becomes even better at drifting. Now the Banshee 900R is very smooth when it comes to drifting, which is why a lot of the community really likes this thing, to my knowledge at least. Now I'm not gonna lie, I'm honestly not the biggest drifter in GTA, but with low grip tires, the ability to get them on every single car in GTA, it has kind of changed my tone towards the whole thing. It makes it so much easier to drift. You don't have to stance your cars or anything crazy like that anymore, so that is a big help. Now the Banshee 900R, you have to buy the initial Banshee, then you have to take it to Benny's and upgrade it for about $550,000, making the grand total of the car about $650,000 to $700,000, depending on how many upgrades you put on and everything like that. You can of course go crazy at Benny's and spend probably millions on this thing if you really want to, but if you just want the Banshee with performance upgrades, it's going to run you about $900,000. I would kind of estimate somewhere around there. Now the Banshee 900R is of course in the supercars category, so this is the first supercar on the list. But the Banshee 900R has never really been known as a great supercar for racing. It's mostly known as a drift car in GTA, and with low grips being added, I mean, you can probably do the math there. It's, you know, super driftable. This thing does have a lot of stability, and a lot of the reason for that is because of how wide this car is, which is definitely a big help when it comes to drifting. As you guys can see, I suck at it, but I'm doing my best. The 900R for $670K is probably one of the smoothest drift cars you can get in the game for that price. I'd say that the Hellfire, honestly, I prefer it a little bit over this thing. It is a little bit hard to control. This thing definitely is going to take some more learning than something like the Hellfire, but for those of you who are willing to learn, it's going to be a really good car for you. So that's it for the Banshee 900R at number 7. Let's move on to number 6. Now this one may surprise a few of you. This is of course the Enos Super Diamond. It goes for $250,000 and it is an OG car in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now the Super Diamond, I've always been a fan of this thing, and especially a fan of it when it comes to sliding. I've driven this thing in the snow. I actually made a video a long time ago doing a review on the car in the snow. This thing has always been insanely good at drifting. I don't know why exactly. It's got pretty good power and it's just always kind of been easy to slide. So when they added low grip tires onto the vehicle, I decided I'm gonna go ahead and throw low grips on this thing and just see how it runs. It runs kind of exactly how I expected it to. It has no grip, but it is really fun to drift. Of course, it is one of the longest vehicles in Grand Theft Auto Online, making it, you know, a little bit sketchy to drift, especially in tight places, but for the most part, it is pretty manageable, I do find. Now, the Super Diamond is definitely not your average drift car. I would probably have never expected to see somebody drifting a Rolls Royce, but of course, it is very capable. As you guys can see by the background gameplay here, this thing is quite controllable actually, and despite its length, it's actually pretty maneuverable too, which you would not expect from a $250,000 Rolls Royce, but it is pretty damn good, I gotta say. I am a super huge fan of the Enos Super Diamond, and with low grip tires, it's just that much more fun. So if you want luxury and you want drifting, in one sentence, the Enos Super Diamond might be the car for you. Not the worst car to buy, that's for sure. For only $250K, it is one of the cheaper cars on this list, and it's definitely one of the ones that I recommend the most, hence it being so high on this list. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it for the Enos Super Diamond at number 6. Let's move on to the next car. Next up, we have the Benefactor Dubsta 6x6. Yes, the 6x6. I know. This thing is pretty weird with low grip tires. The 6x6 has always been kind of a drifty vehicle. If you didn't know that, it doesn't have a lot of grip. This thing is super weirdly weighted, and a lot of the power does go to the rear wheels, but some does also go to the front. So it's got a very strange balance, but it's got a shockingly good drifting balance. This thing is absolutely crazy. The 6x6 has always been kind of a fast truck in GTA, if you want to call it a truck. I guess that's technically what it is, but it's always been kind of a fun vehicle to hoon around in, I felt like at least. And with low grip tires, this thing is an absolute menace to society. It's super controllable, and as long as you don't get too much steering angle, it's really easy to drive. Now don't get me wrong, it's really easy to lose it too, because the steering angle, like I said, is just very sensitive. If you go like 1 degree too far, it's over for you. But the 6x6 is shockingly good at drifting, I have to say. Somebody told me about this in my comments and told me to test it, so I did, and I was like, man, this thing is actually a unit. I love it. Such a good truck, and this thing only goes for $249,000, which is a pretty fair price. It's actually a little bit cheaper than the Super Diamond, obviously only by $1,000, but still cheaper nonetheless. The 6x6 is also one of the most underrated trucks in Grand Theft Auto Online, in my opinion. It can be found on Warstock Cash and Carry, and is definitely a vehicle that I would recommend trying out, guys. This thing is an absolute blast with low grip tires. I probably haven't had as much fun with any of the other cars on the list as I have with the 6x6 with low grips. This thing is absolutely awesome. The only reason that I didn't put it at number 1 is just because, well, it's the 6x6. What? But it definitely was a pleasant surprise that this thing is this much fun with low grip tires. It's also extremely uncontrollable, but I mean, you know what? It's a blast. So anyway, guys, that's it for the 6x6. Definitely pick this thing up if you guys don't have one already, and throw some low grips on it. It's such a fun time. Next up at number 4, we had the Lampadaddy Komoda. Now the Komoda, one of my favorite cars in Grand Theft Auto Online, one of my favorite sedans in Grand Theft Auto Online. I absolutely adore this car. It is such a blast, and with low grip tires, it is also just even more of a blast, honestly. Again, very, very easy to drift. It's got a lot of angle that you can give it, and you can always recover it. This is an easier car to drift, I would say. Now, unfortunately, it does come at a cost, $1,300,000 if you have the trade price unlocked for the car. If you do not, it's going to run you $1.7 million. So it's more expensive than any other car on this list so far. The Komoda definitely not for those of you who are broke in GTA. I would definitely say avoid this thing for the start. There's definitely better cars that you can drift for cheaper than this. This is another car that you really have to get used to it, because if you just bring it a little bit past where the steering angle can handle, you will lose the thing. But for the most part, I do find it pretty easy to control. And when you get going really fast in this thing, it almost becomes easier to drift, I feel like. It is also really good when you're slow too, but for the most part, I like to drift this thing, you know, at a little bit of a quicker speed. Obviously, again, I suck, so don't judge me too hard, I guess. But you can trust me, the Lampadaddy Komoda is really, really fun to drift. Of course, it is a 4-seater vehicle as well, so you can seat 3 of your friends in this thing while you attempt to do drifts. And of course, you're going to embarrass yourself probably a few times, but your friends may think that you are a drifting god, so I mean, you never know, it might be worth it, boys, I don't know. Either way, the Lampadaddy Komoda is a great car. It sounds absolutely fantastic too, so that's a reason in itself to buy a $1.3 to $1.7 million car right there. So definitely check out the Lampadaddy Komoda. You will not regret your purchase. This thing is absolutely awesome. Unfortunately, you're not going to win any races with this car. It's not quite the fastest sports car in the game, but it is one of the best ones. It is a 4-door, of course. So that's it for the Lampadaddy Komoda at number 4. Let's move on to the vehicle at number 3. Next up at number 3, we have the Vapid GB200. Now the Vapid GB200 is a rally car in GTA. Let's just get that out of the way. Now with low grip tires, it becomes very, very strange to drive. Now I do like it, but because of the really short wheelbase, it has a very strange handling balance, which makes it really satisfying when you hit it right, but when you get it wrong, it does kind of mess your day up. So it's high risk, high reward with the GB200. It is kind of interesting because this thing is all-wheel drive with a short wheelbase, so you can do some pretty crazy, like, I don't know what you would call them, but like really high angle drifts with this thing. The only problem is because of the low grip tires, it does take a while to start going again if you lose all your speed and all your momentum during one of those drifts. But when you do manage to drift a corner correctly, this thing can slide really, really well, and if you time your handbrakes at the right time, you can get like a constant drift going with this car, which is really, really satisfying. And if you come down to the docks, that's the best place to drift it I've found so far. I haven't actually tested it off-road, so maybe that's something that you guys might want to look into. That might be kind of fun, honestly. Overall, the Vapid GB200, it goes for $940K, which is kind of on the expensive side, but it's also less than $1 million, so it's kind of cheap as far as GTA goes, in my opinion at least. Some of you may disagree with that. But the GB200, I mean, it's a fantastic car regardless of if you put low grips on it, so if you don't like it with low grips, you can always take those off. It has lots of customization as well. It is, of course, a rally car, like I said, so the exhaust does sound really, really crazy on this thing as well. So if you're into that, then this is a good car for you. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it for the Vapid GB200 at number 3. Let's move on to the next vehicle at number 2. Next up at number 2, we of course have the Dubachi Rapid GT. This thing has always been notoriously good for drifting in Grand Theft Auto Online, and with low grip tires, I can confirm it's just even better. Now this thing goes for about $140,000 if you get the hardtop version. You can of course get the soft top convertible version as well for I believe $132,000. So it's a relatively cheap car, and the performance you get, especially when drifting, is absolutely awesome. Now this car shockingly understeers when you don't have low grip tires on it, but it's always been a really good drift car, and I don't know if that's because of the understeer. I guess to a degree it is, but as you guys can see by these lines that I'm hitting right now, I mean, it's light work in the Rapid GT, boys. It's not the best looking car. It doesn't have much customization at all, if any, actually. I think it might have a spoiler option if you're lucky. If I do remember correctly, I think it actually does. But other than that, there's really not much that you can do to this thing. But you don't really need to. If drifting is your thing, the Rapid GT with low grip tires is an absolute unit. It is so easy to drift this thing. As you guys can see by me driving right now, I haven't even spun it out yet. So if I can do it, you definitely can. Absolutely. The Rapid GT is such a blast to drift. It's really stable. It has kind of the stability of the Banshee 900R, but without the insane oversteer snap that car has. This thing is super forgiving. It's really easy to hit these lines. You guys definitely need to check out the Dubachi Rapid GT. This car is absolutely awesome. Seriously, probably the best drift car in Grand Theft Auto Online, and especially with low grip tires, I mean, it's honestly over. Almost messed it up there right at the end, but we're doing good. So that's it for the car at number 2. Let's move on to the vehicle at number 1. And of course, the number 1 low grip tire vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online is the Canis Seminole. Now to many of you, this will not come as any sort of surprise. The Seminole is of course the fastest vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online, the most armored, the best looking. It's just kind of the GOAT of Grand Theft Auto Online. Now when it comes to drifting with low grip tires, the Canis Seminole is absolutely undefeated. As you guys can see by the insane angle that I'm hitting right here in this drift, the car is absolutely unrivaled. It makes the Rapid GT look like it doesn't even know what it's doing. The Canis Seminole truly is just an absolute god of Grand Theft Auto. I mean, you can't go wrong with this thing. $30,000 with low grip tires, a combined $30,500 in order to drift the best car in the game. I mean, it is a very small price to pay. Of course, it is also a 4-seater, so you can have 3 onlookers in your vehicle with you while you're hitting insane sick lines like I am doing right now in the gameplay that you guys are watching. Canis Seminole, truly best vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online. If anyone disputes this in the comments, I want to see you guys absolutely tearing them apart. Be nice, of course, but make sure they understand. For 30 grand, you cannot go wrong. Everyone should buy a Canis Seminole, everyone should put low grips on it, and everyone should go out and drift it. This thing is an absolute unit. It is an absolute beast. If you don't own a Canis Seminole already, what are you doing? Get off this video, go ahead and buy one right now. So guys, there you have it. Those are 10 really great old vehicles with low grip tires in Grand Theft Auto Online. Definitely check all of these ones out. If you found this video useful or helpful, or you enjoyed it, a like is of course appreciated, if not dislike. Subscribe if you guys are new. Comment down below. Let me know what your favorite car to drift with low grip tires is, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.